Welcome to the show. You're listening to Hebrew Hits. Today I have in the studio with me producer Hillel Kapnick. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Thanks for having me on.
Of course, it's my pleasure having you. Well, tell me a little bit about yourself.
That is a great question. I've been producing and performing Jewish music now probably for, it's got to be somewhere in like 10 years or something like that. It's been a long time, really ever since middle of high school, pretty much, that I first started, getting out there performing at Simchas. Once I hit around roughly like base medrash time, I started to explore recording and studio equipment, and then the rest is, the rest. I would say the rest is history, but the rest is like the history is still being created, as the days go on.
So how did you get into producing in the beginning?
So the truth is, it really all started with the want to put out my own music. I mean, from the first music I ever put out, like even by my wedding, we actually gave out a CD with a couple songs that had been that I had composed and that I wanted to share with the world at the time, or at least with the people that were at my wedding anyway. And like one of the songs, the music was done by Aryeh Kunstler, who now is a very close friend of mine, and we've done a ton of projects together, and he's unbelievably talented. And the other one, funny enough. The music was done by Simcha Leiner.
Really?
Yeah, which is
Before he was Simcha Leiner?
before he officially became Simcha Leiner.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he had done the music. It was probably right after, or pretty soon after, he had first come out with Kol Barama, which honestly took the entire world by storm. Like, it was huge. And so he ended up getting involved in doing music on one of the other songs, and then I added in some music on a third and fourth song. But like that was really my first like real step into attempting to do recordings. And even that was, I mean, I'm definitely proud of it for what it was then, but comparatively it's like night and day. It's like all the way at the beginning, and it just, it got even crazier from there.
Well, of course it did. You know what I'm saying? You grow and it becomes even crazier. So tell me, what is different about your production company than the other production companies out there?
Okay, good question. So the truth is, it's hard to really, put myself up against the other guys, because I really do believe that every producer, every arranger, every musician, every composer, everyone really has their own talents.
Mm-hmm.
And every guy kind of like shines in their own way. So I know for myself, for example, it's actually, like now I can actually talk about it because it was officially like announced just recently. There was a big Torah Anytime campaign.
Yes.
During their stream, they announced that I had partnered up with them to make a theme song for the organization. And so, like as a good example, that theme song, I started pretty much all the work on putting the song together and composing it, and even writing the lyrics. And at a certain point, I felt, we need like some other flavors in here. Like you can't just get like one scoop with the same flavor. You got to get like a couple extra scoops with some other flavors. So I ended up pulling in a couple other producers. A good friend of mine, Adam Shapiro from Lakewood, and I ended up pulling in Aryeh Kunstler. And I ended up pulling in a Nochi Krohn, and by the time it was done, it was like the perfect it was like the perfect cholent of producers to make like an amazing track. That being said, even though everyone has their own has their specific things that shine, one of the things that I really try to focus on is bringing out like the I guess it's hard to say like the soul of the artist, but bringing out the creative soul of the artist, where there's a lot of guys that I have the privilege of working with who are unbelievably talented. Some who are just starting out, and some who are a little more established. And it's one of those things, we tend to take artists that we admire, and almost like I guess to say copy wouldn't be wouldn't be the nicest word, but to imitate them.
Mm-hmm.
And biggest things that an artist really has to do is like find their own voice, and find where they stand in the spectrum of all that. Find what figure out what actually matters to them, so that they can figure out what they should be singing about, as opposed to just like finding something that happens to be a little catchy, and just putting it out just because, oh yeah, it sounded nice at the time, but there's like nothing backing it up. It's nice. There's nothing inherently wrong with it, but there's nothing really there.
Right? When somebody sings from their soul and from inside them, those are the songs that get noticed because you could feel what they're singing. If they're just copying somebody else, they're copying somebody else. They're not singing from inside of them.
100%.
So let me give you the scenario. Somebody comes into your studio, they have so much talent, so much potential, but they're not confident in reaching that highest note or reaching that lowest note. How do you give them the confidence?
So a lot of it is really helping like the artists or the singers or the musicians to like understand that what they've considered to be their limitations for probably a very long time are very rarely their actual limitations.
Interesting.
And like this is, you know, my like famous example that I've said over many times is that in a many years ago in a completely different lifetime, I went through a lifeguarding course, which has definitely expired for like many years now, and I can't imagine I'd be able to save anybody, you know, that was like in a lake or whatever. But at least it helps for this. Is that one of the things they told us in the course is that when somebody's under the water and they're pretty confident that they're done, like it's game over, this is how it ends. Really, they have about 15 seconds left,
Wow.
and which is like a crazy thing because like 15 seconds doesn't sound like a lot of time, but if you're like stuck underneath the water, 15 seconds is a lot of time. And the reason that they feel like that is because it's really like it's kind of like an insurance policy within your brain that your brain is telling you like, okay, you got to get up right now, like make it happen. You
Mhm.
know, don't use those extra 15 seconds. You know, we don't want to run out the clock. And that actually you know, that system manifests itself in different ways also. You know, if somebody in theory, not that I recommend this, but in theory, if somebody gets upset and they decide to hit a wall, so it's the same idea. Most of the time, the reason why they won't break a bone is because their brain is telling them, if you hit this wall at full force, you're gonna break something, so don't do it. And the brain actually will slow down the human body so that someone who hits a wall is not hitting it at full force. Um,
Very cool.
and it works the same way with singing, where a lot of it honestly is mental, and it's you know, a lot of it is like in your head, and you kind of tell yourself like, oh, there's no way I can hit that note. But I've seen many times over on the, like there's always the rare occasion where you have a kid who like is, you know, he just became bar mitzvah and his voice changed and like it's just not happening, like he's got to get used to a different vocal range. But outside of like that, you know, once in a while, you know, outside of that once in a while time where it just is reality, many times it's really just people that get too much and like they go too far inside of their own heads, and they've convinced themselves that like there's no way I'm going to be able to hit that, and really they just need to be like they just need to let themselves go and say like, you know what, I understand my mind is telling me this, I'm just not going to listen, I'm just going to do my own thing, and that's when the greatest stuff really comes out.
Does that just happen in one session, or you actually have to sit with these boys that you're recording with and tell that to those that are not so confident in the studio?
So the truth is, I would say the vast majority of the time, I'm trying to think if there's ever been a situation where somebody had to come back for us to like do it again. I don't think it's almost ever happened. It's usually like, I mean, like I'll you know, I'll run them through it pretty tough, you know, like a couple times until we get there. But it almost always comes out when they, you know, whenever it is that they come in to do vocals. Sometimes it's when we're first putting together the song. Sometimes it's after all the music's already been created, and now
Mhm.
they're just, you know, putting their vocals on and any finishing touches and stuff like that. But the truth is, like once they come in and I go into like vocal coach mode, it usually, you know, thank God, it usually works itself out.
You really know what you're doing then if you can get it done all in one session smoothly.
Oh, it's, you know, practice makes perfect. After a bunch of years, you start to. It's also like honestly, I think a big part of this. Honestly, this applies to like probably a lot of things in life and a lot of different businesses.
Mhm.
But there are definitely, you know, through the years, there have definitely been, you know, studio engineers or producers, or I guess probably more studio engineers than anything else, where somebody comes in to record, and as far as they're concerned, and it's not, you know, it's not chas v'shalom, like not saying anything, you know, nice on them, but as far as they're concerned, their entire job is to press the record button, and that's it. And that's, I mean, in theory, that is kind of what it is, but at the end of the day, you need to have a vested interest in bringing out the best in the people that are coming to record. And if all you do is just sit there and press the record button, you might even get some really great stuff once in a while. but you're not going to get the amazing stuff that you get when you really like connect with the person,
Yeah.
like, and like get into their heads a little bit in terms of like what they're thinking and what they're feeling. Like one of my favorite things to do really before I start any song is to have someone come in and literally just hang out, just schmooze and have them play the song for me, or if they don't play an instrument, have them sing it, and then I'll pick up a guitar, or I'll pull out my keyboard or something like that, and just start playing through the song and just start coming up with ideas, and sort of like it's really like more of a jam session than it is
Hmm.
like a studio recording session. But that's when a lot of the great stuff really comes
Yeah.
out. You already start to like, you get used to each other, and like it's very normal, honestly, with a lot of artists, but even more so when you're working with younger kids, where it's normal for all of us to some degree to be self-conscious of the art that we're releasing to the public, and
Yeah.
just praying that somebody's not going to like stomp all over, you know. um and
So
like
you really invest your time and you get better results that way. You get positive results.
100%. So like even more so when you have like a younger kid who comes in and like he doesn't even want to sing in front of his own family, like let alone you, like he just met you for the first time. And so like the first step is really like connecting with these kids and like getting into, getting an understanding of what they want to accomplish, with their music. And like it's really awesome. Like once it all comes together, that's really what brings out the greatest stuff.
Sounds amazing. Like it sounds amazing how you deal with the kids. You're like, you're gonna do this and you get it done. So right now you're producing, you're doing an awesome job. Where do you see your career in 5 years?
So I mean, if all it's all up to Hashem, obviously, but hopefully doing the same stuff.
Yeah.
This is absolutely living the dream. I mean, over the years, I worked a lot of different day jobs before I, Baruch Hashem, started doing music full time, and I never found anything to be as fulfilling as being involved in Jewish music and studio and audio projects, and playing music at simchas. Like, I mean, for sure with live music. There's no greater feeling than being able to like Baruch Hashem make a living from bringing simcha to people. Like that's awesome. That's like the
Yeah.
greatest thing.
Are there any musicians that you would like to collaborate with?
That is a great question. The truth is, a lot of the people that I would have put on that list, a bunch of years ago, are like, thank God, people who I now work with all the time, which is awesome.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Um, as far as like artists, or composers or singers or musicians who I'd love to do a lot more with. I mean, for me, my absolute favorite composer and very possibly favorite like vocalist of all time, which might sound surprising because he doesn't really bill himself as like a vocalist for the most part, would actually be A.B. Rottenberg.
Oh, really?
And so like this is a many years back, but many years back when I was first like learning the ropes of this kind of stuff, I happened to have gotten very close with a guy who actually now runs a huge marketing company out of Lakewood, I believe. His name is Shmuley Rosenberg. He
Okay.
produced many albums over the years, and he did a lot of stuff specifically for URA, out of a lot of the organizations. Um, and at one point, URA was looking to do one of their Schmorg CDs, and the plan was for them to come to Muncie, because A.B. Rottenberg was here staying at, I think it was his daughter's house. It was like the Shabbos right before the Haas concert, so he came in from, I think he's usually in Toronto, I think. He came in to be by his daughter's house, and Ura had wanted to do a version of like going back to like the old Journey CDs. They had a song called Yeshiva Charade, and they
Of
wanted
course I know that song.
they wanted to do Yeshiva Charade Part Two. And so I got like for me this was like the dream, as like someone who was like just learning the business, is I got a call from Shmuley, and he's like, oh, you want to be like my assistant on the job because I'm going to record AB. And I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. Like I should pay you to like be part of that. And like to this day, I still every so often I go back, I have all these like pictures and videos from that session. Like that's, for me, that's probably one of the places where it all began, because like there was just so much, like it was such an amazing experience to be part of that. And when Shmuley and I showed up, AB had probably written about 70 to 80% of the song, and he's like, "Yeah, I didn't finish it yet." And we're like, "Oh, okay, so let's all finish it together." And I'm like, "Wait, what? This is awesome!" So like it was off the hook. Like I ended up getting a line in the song. Shmuley got a couple lines in the song. Like that was the coolest thing ever, to be like part of like the actual like composing process. And like we're talking about Yeshiva Charade here. Like all we did was like make fun of the culture for 20 minutes to like, come up with like all these jokes that we could throw in the songs
Yeah.
about, driving like broken up station wagons and, like eating, like eating cholent after Mishmar and like, oh, it was great. Like
Oh my gosh.
we broke up every stereotype we could think of to like make the song awesome. And Ura after that like did a music video with it and they put it out with the Shmorg. Yeah, it was awesome.
Did you get any credit for it?
That is a good question. I don't think I actually did for the writing because it was one of those like by the way kind of things. Like it just kind of
Okay.
happened. Um, but it was like such an awesome experience.
So what is your favorite music to produce? Because you probably produce many different types of music.
Yeah, that's definitely true. So the truth is, I mean, like Jewish music has definitely gone through little like little changes,
Hmm.
which to some degree is definitely affected by like all the music in the world and what the entire world is listening to, and that like eventually like sort of seeps its way into like Jewish music, to some degree. That being so like for example years back a lot of the stuff was a lot more organic, so drums, bass, guitar, stuff like that, and a lot of the music nowadays tends to at least lean towards the more like electronic
Hmm.
genre of music. But that being said, like for me, honestly, like I have a lot of fun producing like all different, genres and subgenres of Jewish music. For me, like my favorite thing is really to work with like honestly, I love working with new artists. It's one of my favorite things. Like guys who are like fresh and they're ready to go and they're excited. Like I remember like years ago somebody introduced me to like to a guy who was like I guess you'd call him a performer. He
Hmm.
composed songs and he performed them himself. And at the time they said like, oh, you got to meet this guy, like he's awesome, you got to hear his stuff. And we sat down and he played some stuff for me, and like right away I was super excited. I'm like, this music is amazing, like the compositions really mean something. Like okay, let's do something, like this is great. And the guy was like, I'm not sure, I have to like think about it. And I'm like, listen, I can't be excited enough for two people. You know what I mean? Like I absolutely love working with people who are excited. It's
Yeah.
very, very hard though for somebody to be excited enough for two people.
Yeah, well, that was the point where you had to give him the confidence. You know what I'm saying?
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
So then, what ended up happening with that?
So the truth is, in the end, so the truth is, him and I haven't actually released any music yet. I know some of his songs were actually taken by other artists because I
Oh,
don't know if he himself was like ready to really put himself out there as like a real performer. He was
oh,
more like backyard kind of gigs and stuff like that. But as far as like really getting out there, like you do have to be like mentally ready for that to some degree. Like
yeah.
ready to go out. But that being said, like I absolutely love working with new artists. That's why, like, I mean, thank God over the last couple years, I've been really, really privileged to do a lot of the Waterbury tracks, and that was a really, really awesome experience, and it continues to be a really awesome experience, because a lot of these guys, like, they're just like developing their composing skills and lyric writing skills and composition skills and playing instruments and stuff like that, and like you get to be there for all of that, and it's such a cool thing to be a part of.
Not only that, but you'll be able to say, "I knew them when they were just starting out." Like
Yeah,
when they're,
yeah,
you'll be like, "I was the one that produced their music when they were just starting out."
100%.
So I know that you got the advice during your lifeguard course, but what besides for that has been the best advice you've been given?
That is a great question. I mean, I would definitely say for when it comes to live music, one of the greatest pieces of advice I got was that it's better to it's like a funny thing because you would typically think I guess you would like to think that people would typically think this anyway, but that being said, it's always better to be like early to a gig and set up like ready to go 2 hours before the simcha actually starts, where you're literally just doing nothing for 2 hours, than to risk anything that's going to lead to like a rushed stressful setup. There is nothing more like there's nothing more stressful than like, to set up like 20 minutes before a simcha starts, and like it's happened over the years. Every once in a while there's an accident on the highway, and even when you left early enough, and every so often like craziness comes up which is completely out of your control.
Mhm.
And when that happens, like those are really tough times, and you just gotta like jump in there and make it happen.
So this is not only the best advice you've been given, but you're basically giving over advice too to anybody doing live music. Get there early.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Like for me personally, I'd rather be at a job easily 2 to 3 hours before it starts, just to be there ready to go, than risk anything else.
Well, before we go, I've got one more question to ask you.
Go for it.
So take us through a normal day at the studio.
Okay, so that being said, it depends on the day. Uh,
Okay.
I do happen to produce, thank God, a lot of music, but I also have gotten involved with a lot of other, audio and studio recording related things, such as doing voiceovers and doing everything from radio commercials to podcast intros, doing a whole number of kids like story CDs. There's a book series called Mitos Man, where we've already done 5 of those, and we've put out one under a sub series called Mitos Malka, and we're about to finish up like the 6th book and then the 2nd book of Mitos Malka, and I tend to get myself involved in like a lot of different projects, everything from music to the stories to voiceovers. And so every day really is different, but every day is pretty much like, thank God, like jam packed with like there's always something new going on. There's
That's
always.
the fun thing about music. That's the fun thing about music.
Yeah, it's perfect. There's always something new happening. There's always, someone new that's working on music, or some new opportunity that jumped up to do, some sort of audio related work for somebody. Like, there's always something cool going on.
And your hours, I'm assuming, are not like 9 to 5.
They are not I mean, I guess you could say they're structured to some degree. But the truth is, thank God, because I have the privilege of doing this stuff. So I'm also here to really, serve as best as I can the artists that want to come in and record. So if you have somebody who's, looking to put out music and they're working a 9 to 5, then we're not working until they finish their job anyway. So
Right.
sometimes, that does sometimes translate out to, sessions that'll, start unbelievably late and go till, the sun comes up. And that does happen. But it's all good stuff.
Well, that was producer Hillel Kapnick on Hebrew Hits. Thank you so much for being here with us today. And you can check out all of his music and his portfolio down in the link below. Follow Hillel Kapnick on Instagram at Hillel Caps. Again, thank you so much for being here. Have a wonderful night.